is always going to be. It's game week in Duval County. Jags and Panthers on Sunday. And in the club today, we have Dmitri Ravanos, the co-host, I should say, of the This Team is Killing Us podcast, brought to you by OG Triangle Media, and noted Alabama alum. He's going to take us through the evolution of Bryce Young as a quarterback from his time in college to why things may have gone wrong in the first half of Dave Canales' first season at the helm of the Carolina Panthers to now, where there's a lot of promise about Bryce heading into year 3. Old friend of Duval, Cassidy Hill, now the team reporter for the Carolina Panthers, is also going to join us live at 1:20 p.m. Make sure you guys stick around and you interact, you comment, all that fun stuff. We're also live for the very first time in the Action Sports Jacks podcast studio. It's the first guest preview, the first game week preview Thursday. Let's have some fun, folks. Welcome into the club. Club 904 officially open on a Thursday. I am your host, Mia O'Brien. Thanks for tuning into episode 2 of this all-new series, a detailed breakdown 3 days a week of your favorite hometown team, the Jacksonville Jaguars. Of course, tons of ways that you can get involved with the show. Of course, let's start with this. You can comment. First and foremost, live, whether you're watching this on Twitter right now, if you're watching on YouTube, you're watching on Twitch, you comment, we read your tweets, we answer your questions live on the air, 1 p.m. Tuesdays and Thursdays, not to mention a special 9:04 p.m. post-game each and every Sunday following the Jacksonville Jaguars game. Subscribe to the O'Brien NFL Notebook. That way. I promise I know my left from my right. That is where you can find my notebooks from practices, from inside the Jaguars locker room. And of course, by subscribing, you're supporting this podcast inadvertently. You also can support our friends at Action Sports Jacks, where we syndicate this podcast live Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays. So check us out on demand on their YouTube channel. Just go to the live tab and you'll be able to go back and watch Club 904 shows on demand. We'll get a playlist going at some point. Stuart Weber is somewhere in the studio right now. I'm going to make sure we get that so you guys can find your Club 904 on demand nice and easy. And of course, you can also find Club 904 at the Action Sports Jacks podcast channel, wherever you get your podcasts. All right, today's agenda. Whole heck of a lot to get to. Dmitri Ravanos, unfortunately, has a conference right now. Shout out to the friends at Barrett Sports Media. So therefore, he can't join us live, but I got a chance to catch up with him last night. You'll hear that interview here momentarily. Again, a specific breakdown of Bryce Young and what he has to do in year 3 to truly cement himself, maybe not as a top 10 quarterback, because even though Demetri is as big a fan of Bryce as there is perhaps on planet Earth, he never actually goes as far as to say that Bryce Young can be a top 10 quarterback in the National Football League, which is rather interesting. Cassidy will join us live at 1:20 p.m. in the club here at not live in the Action Sports Jack studios. That would be cool. But of course, here on Club 904. We also will do a live Q&A, so keep your questions coming throughout the course of the show, both on YouTube as well as on X, Twitch, Facebook, wherever you are, and we'll hit more of those after Cassidy heads on out the club. But let's begin with this. Who's getting a jersey on game day for the Jacksonville Jaguars? Yes, you have a 53-man active roster, but of course, only 48 players actually get a jersey on game day. Liam Cohen made the comment while the Jaguars were at joint practices in Miami that the reality is, while they would love to have all 4 of their running backs who they have kept on the active roster up on game day, it's going to be extremely tough. And I think that that's really got a lot of wheels turning here in the 904 as far as, will we not see Bashal Tutin? Will we not see LaQuint Allen or maybe one of those 2 veteran running backs on Sunday against the Carolina Panthers because of a sheer numbers game? We know that Wyatt Milam and Buster Brown have been battling their way back from injuries. Cole Van Lanen missed most of training camp, but is expected to be the swing tackle for the Jaguars this year, with the team moving on from Fred Johnson and trading him back to the Philadelphia Eagles, where he came. I'm curious if, number one, Van Lanen is available. I believe he will be. Got to catch up with him in the locker room earlier this week, but perhaps the medical staff says, let's wait a week. And if you hold Van Lanen out, now do you have to have a practice squad elevation? Do you have to bring someone else into the equation to ensure you have 8 healthy linemen who could be active and available on Sunday against the Panthers in week 1? Because I don't think Milam will be available. We saw him off to the side at practice yesterday. Buster Brown also working off to the side. Not to say that both are working off to the side in a way in which you'd say, oh no, they're not going to be ready to play this season, but in a way that suggests, hey, they're working, may not be fully there for a game in 4 days' time. And so you take those 2 out. So now you're at 51. Those 2 rookie edge rushers that everyone is so excited that James Gladstone, Liam Cohen were able to find 2 diamonds in the rough, and Danny Strigow out of Minnesota, BJ Green out of Colorado by way of ASU. This thought of, oh my goodness, this is amazing that we're developing young talent. But will those 2 young talented edge rushers actually get a jersey on Sunday in what will be their first professional game based off the numbers? Because DeJuan Smoot, Emmanuel Ogbah, unquestioned, your number 3, your number 4 edge rushers behind Josh Hines-Allen and Trayvon Walker. And so if that's the case, I mean, that's already more depth than Trent Baalke had on any of his last 2 teams here in Jacksonville, for what it's worth. And so do you need to keep those 2 guys up? What's interesting is that both Strigow and BJ Green do play special teams, something Smoot and Ogbah, as veterans, as stalwarts along this defensive line, who can go inside and outside, as James Gladstone noted last week in his availability with the media. They do not. And so that's where I think those 2 are the logical 2 to help you get from 51 to 49. But I'm fascinated knowing that they can contribute on special teams. And then the final piece of the puzzle when it comes to who will be active for the Jaguars on game day Sunday against the Carolina Panthers, and in turn, how do you develop the game plan on offense and defense based around that, is the cornerback position. The Jaguars are currently carrying, if you want to include Travis Hunter, 12 defensive backs. 5 safeties, 7, 6-ish cornerbacks, again, depending on the Travis Hunter situation. We already noted that Buster Brown could be down for this game as he works his way back from a foot injury. Do you say, okay, Travis can step in and be a corner for us so we don't need Christian Braswell? But Christian Braswell is a core 4 special teamer. All right, you got 5 safeties. Do you really need Darnell Savage, Antonio Johnson, and Rayon Lane? 2 of those 3 guys are also core 4 special teamers in Johnson and Rayon Lane. And so now you put yourself in a situation where potentially, do you look at a more veteran guy like Darnell Savage, or heaven forbid, let's go back to that running back room. Tank Bigsby right now is your lead kick returner. That's part of special teams. But do you say, well, LaQuint Allen can return kicks, or Bashal Tutin can return kicks? And so now you see what I'm saying when it comes to there's going to be some difficult decisions even after cutting this roster down to 53 when it comes to your hometown team. All right, let's get our first guest in the club here on a lovely Thursday, a preview Thursday. Again, his name is Dmitri Ravanos. He hosts the podcast This Team is Killing Us. He is a noted Alabama alum, and he is going to break down why the Carolina Panthers and their fan base, much like the Jaguars fans out there listening to this show right now, believe that this one is a must-win on Sunday, and it should be a relatively easy lift. A friend of the pod, Dmitri Ravanos, the producer of the women's basketball podcast, the masterminds, besides the Joes, of course, behind OG Triangle Media, and of course, the host, or co-host, I should say, of This Team is Killing Us with regards to the Carolina Panthers. Demetri, welcome to Club 904. Thanks for hanging with us.
Thank you. I want to show that I came prepared as I am rocking my Tiger Record shirt that I got last time I was down in Jacksonville.
Hey, listen, you know, you may host a show about the Carolina Panthers, but we know deep down you really are Duval at heart, even if you grew up in Alabama, which I promised
Right.
that we won't have too many Alabama digs. But part of why I wanted to have you on this podcast, part of why you're doing a podcast right now about the Carolina Panthers is, yes, you live in the state of North Carolina, but B, you are an alum. You are a Alabama football fan, you are the perfect person to speak to when it comes to the evolution of Bryce Young as a quarterback, from his time in high school in Southern California to his time in Tuscaloosa to now under the tutelage of Dave Canales. So 30,000 foot, let's start big picture. Bryce Young, where he currently is, where he still could go in his quarterbacking career. You say?
I still think the sky is the limit for the guy. Now, realistically, I don't believe we're ever going to talk to him or talk about him as one of those 8, 10 best quarterbacks in the league. But I think his ceiling is a successful, acceptable NFL starting quarterback. Now, I would have said that this time last year as well. And obviously, the first 2 games of the 2024 season were so much worse than anything we had seen in the 2023 season. But I think, Bryce's dad is a psychologist. Bryce has always been more focused on his mental ability than his physical abilities. Yeah, the stature is small, and that is going to be limiting. But I said this, and I hope I would have recognized this even if I were not a diehard Bama guy. Just based on the intangibles alone, a dude like Bryce doesn't come along very often. So I never thought it was crazy that the Panthers would take him over Stroud, and I've never really felt the need to get off the bus, even when he was struggling at his most.
Right. And I'm in the same boat, by the way, because not even the game against Tennessee withstanding, in which I proclaimed him as the wizard, even in a loss, how he was able to navigate Alabama through that game in Knoxville. Like, I still look back at that and I say, that is a guy who overcame the shortcomings of the roster around him, which is a very rare thing to say about a Nick Saban-led team going up against a Josh Heupel team. But I digress, but it's for all the reasons you just outlined. I believed Bryce Young when he stood at the podium at the NFL Combine and he said, I was the smallest quarterback and the smallest player in high school. I was the smallest guy on the field at Alabama. I actually stood next to him at SEC Media Days, 5'2" Mia. I was looking, a lot of people were using that Zapruder film that was the photo Roger Hoover took of me and Bryce Young standing next to each other for context. But I believed him when he said that despite his measurables, he had the heart of a lion and he would find a way to overcome. And so that's why I've been a fan. But my bigger question is, it's great that he believes he has heart over height. Why did it start clicking in the second half of the 2024 season under Dave Canales?
I think that benching him honestly slowed things down for him in a very serious way. In 2023, amidst all these struggles, and remember, it wasn't just that Bryce physically was not performing to the level he was used to. Bryce did not have the type of players around him that he was used to. Remember, this dude went to Mater Dei in California. That is a high school powerhouse. That is the Bama of high school football. He had never been in a situation where all of the best players at each position were not at his disposal. On top of that, changing from Frank Reich, who very clearly never wanted to coach Bryce Young and never really had a plan for Bryce Young, making the coaching change from Frank Reich, going out and adding a guy like Xavier Leggett, I think we were so eager to see this investment. And it was a huge investment when you think not only of the trade with Chicago to get up to number one in the 2023 draft, but I believe the stat was that in the last 3 years leading up to drafting Bryce, combined with that trade, the Panthers had spent 11 picks trying to solve the quarterbacking needs with 3 different quarterbacks. Because remember, the year before they traded up for Matt Corral, who was out of the league the next year as well. So there was this real impatience, and people didn't really look at what the bigger problems were. Yeah, they beefed up the interior of the offensive line, but Xavier Leggett is the only pass catcher you added. Like, that doesn't work. So there was a lot of pressure on the guy. He comes out, he looks as bad as he has ever looked. Him getting benched, I think, allowed him to kind of reframe where things were. Andy Dalton has been a huge ally in the sense that Dalton has been very matter of fact with him. I am not here trying to take your job, but I'm also not trying not to play. Andy Dalton has always been a good ally and has been very clear. I'm not here trying to take your job. I understand my goal is to elevate you, but I'm also not trying not to play. So if you want this job back, you got to come get it. And I think between that and Dave Canales being motivated to fix this problem because he knows his future is tied to Bryce Young, I think they got on the same page. And the fact that he was able to come back immediately win that game against New Orleans that he did and follow that up with the win in Germany and not just be, shoulder slumped down. Like he literally was crying on the field against the Chargers in week 2. I think the ability to come back and do what he did won the teammates that may have been doubting him over at that point. And that helped tremendously.
Right. So here's the interesting thing. Chicken or the egg question. Love chicken or the egg questions. Was it as simple as they added Adam Thielen? They added additional pass catchers, Jalen Coker, the undrafted free agent, who, of course, won't be available for this game in his second season because he was placed on IR, short-term IR, and he's out for this game against the Jaguars. Was it as simple as you added more pass catchers besides Xavier Legette and they emerged? Or was there something to the scheme that Dave Canales brought to Carolina that then got the best of Bryce?
Yeah, Dave Canales, from the moment that Bryce came back in, Dave Canales was much more open about his trust in Bryce being able to take advantage of who was on the field. Remember, Thielen was there before Bryce was. They signed Thielen as a free agent before they ended up drafting Bryce. And, I look at this game in week 1, and I certainly hope that Xavier Legette has made the strides that we so desperately need him to make. I hope Tetairoa McMillan is everything that they tell us he is, because Adam Thielen was quite the safety blanket for Bryce Young. I'm going to be very interested to see what Bryce is without not only his favorite target, but another one of those veteran calming presences for him. The other guy that he's missing is the guy that caught the second most passes from him last year in Jalen Coker. Now, Coker will be back. Bryce and Tetairoa McMillan's connection seems to be very real, but I can't help but wonder what this team is mentally without those two presences around Bryce for this game.
So to answer the chicken or the egg question, you believe the receivers are what unlocked the best in Bryce Young. It wasn't necessarily Dave Canales giving him more layups in the second half of the season once he was reinserted as the starter. Scheme or
no, it wasn't a new scheme. I think it was the receivers, and I think it was Bryce Young having to see that he can hit these dudes. That he did not forget how to do this. He struggled, and you can reset and come back and be, fine. Like I said, I think he's a perfectly good, perfectly serviceable starting quarterback in the NFL.
Now, with that said, I would assume, and this was obviously the case at Alabama, and perhaps much like Trevor Lawrence, it was an underrated storyline for Bryce coming into the National Football League. He also needs a capable run game. Yes? No? Maybe so?
Yes. I think that it's I only laugh at that question because this is sort of what we've been dealing with in Carolina. Like, Chuba Hubbard is a very capable running back. I think that part of what you saw in year 1 was year 1 under Bryce, they were still thinking Miles Sanders was going to be the alpha dominant running back, and Miles Sanders was hiding an injury from everybody. Chuba Hubbard has come in, and he has been an absolute bowling ball, able to get through defensive lines when things are not bearing down on the Panthers. I think the problem has been that, and look, as a fan of the team, this is not fun, but this is reality. They've been behind so much in the last 2 years that no matter how good Chuba is, you're not going to use him that much. But yeah, I mean, if they can get out in this game, and this is an interesting game, right? Because I think both fan bases think there's no excuse for their team to lose this game. I think if Chuba Hubbard can establish right away what he can do, if Rico Dowdle can establish right away that he is, he has talked about viewing himself as a 1A, not a 2 back in the system. If he can show that off, then things are going to be even easier for the Panthers. I think they'll win. I don't think it will be easy, but boy, if they come out and the Jaguars cannot do anything to contain that run game, it could be a runaway.
So let's wrap with this. Number one, what is an acceptable season for Bryce Young here, year 2 under Dave? But also, number 2, to your point of this is a fan base that expects to win this game. Why? Why do you believe the Panthers should have the upper hand in this matchup?
I think the Panthers should have an upper hand because I think that if Bryce takes this step from what we saw at the end of the season in that Atlanta game where he's throwing up the hands before David Moore even catches the touchdown pass, the next logical step is you should be able to beat a team like the Jaguars, who are probably as good as you are, and you are just both teams are looking for that moment, that mistake to seize on to take control of this game. I think the Teteroa McMillan edition, it's funny, on our last podcast, I gave Lauren 25 predictions for the Panthers in 2025. And I, right up front said Teteroa McMillan, Offensive Rookie of the Year. I think that this team is going to throw a lot. And I think that's the guy they want the ball to go to. In the preseason, the first time Bryce threw to Teteroa McMillan in the preseason, he threw one of these passes that in years past, you would go, oh no, Bryce, what are you doing? Did you just forget how to play football? And then it lands so softly in Teteroa McMillan's hands along the sideline. You remember that's why we went out and drafted a giant, to be able to do those sorts of things. So I think that that is the kind of dude that covers up, or I guess eliminates, the low end that could happen when Bryce is off. That's why you go out and get a guy like that. So I'm a big believer in those two. I also think that, look, this was the worst defense, not just in the league last year. This is the worst defense in the history of the NFL last year. They have to be better, right? They absolutely have to be better. And it's funny, as bad as they really were just a can you get one more stop away from beating both of the teams in the Super Bowl last year. And I get it. 24 is over. This is 25. But if we were literally one stop and Xavier Leggett making what would have been an insane catch away from beating the eventual Super Bowl champions, Jacksonville should be pretty easy.
There it is. There it is. Demetri, let the folks at home know where they can find not only your work with regards to the Panthers, but all the cool stuff that you, me, and the OG Triangle Media crew have cooking up there in the Triangle.
Yeah, wherever it is you get podcasts, if you're looking for the audio version, or on YouTube, just search for OG Triangle Media. You can see Mia's women's basketball podcast. You can see This Team Is Killing Us. You can see all the stuff we do. And look, if you have a perverse curiosity about just how bad things can get in Chapel Hill this year, we got you covered, brother.
You took the words out of my mouth. I told multiple people in the Jaguars media room Wednesday they need to listen to every single one of Ovius and Giglio's late night reactions to Chapel Bill and UNC football, because I was rolling listening to Monday night's episode.
I told everybody on Tuesday that after Alabama just came out and got their doors blown off on Saturday, watching that Monday night, I was happy to know at least nobody else on the whole will be happy today either.
Hey, listen, I promised I wouldn't bash Alabama too much. I don't think I did. Dmitri, thanks so much for hopping in the club. We'll catch you next time, friend.
Thank you, Mia.
Again, our thanks to our friend Dmitri Ravanos, who, yes, also moonlights as the producer of the Women's Basketball Podcast, where you can also catch yours truly. He is at a convention right now up in New York City, so appreciate him taking some time to get that interview knocked out last night so that we could bring it to you all. And yes, here we go. I see Dell already. Gave you some bulletin board material as well. Our next guest is getting set up, so let's hit a quick commercial break before we bring her into the club. You are listening to Club 904, syndicated on the Action Sports Jax streaming.
For anyone in your family, just remember, nobody but Nimnick, the #1 Buick GMC dealer in Jacksonville. Get the latest price breaks on 2023 and 2024 models, or the newest 2025 vehicles in the showroom on Phillips Highway, or shop online at nimnickbuickgmc.com 24 hours a day. GMC Sierras, Yukons, and the redesigned Acadias, or get the all-new redesigned line with Buicks. It's nobody but Nimnick, and part of the reason why is this is a first-class buying experience here at Nimnick Buick GMC. You're not just a customer, you're a friend. This is about getting a vehicle that best fits you and getting you on the road, and also helping you and your family down the road. Nimnicht has a treating you right guarantee. Courtesy, respect, fairness. The most Buicks, GMCs, and Jacksonville's only Car Bravo dealer, nobody but Nimnicht. Who has put in the most years and stands behind a better experience? Nobody but Nimnicht. GMC. We are professional grade.
Putting your needs first. It's the backbone of how First Florida Credit Union does business. In all honesty, you might as well be speaking another language when it comes to finances. Sure, I'm good with my money, but what am I missing in the fine print? That's what led me to First Florida Credit Union. They're the perfect choice for anyone starting their financial journey because they keep finances easy. Plus, they offer financial education and resources I can trust. So I'm always growing more confident. And as a young adult, I am constantly adding more responsibilities to my plate. From a car payment to a mortgage, it all adds up. Luckily, First Florida Credit Union makes sure it adds up in all the right places and not the wrong ones by offering better rates and lower fees than traditional banks, even if you're still trying to grow your credit. Because as a member-owned institution, First Florida genuinely puts people's needs first rather than focusing on profit. So I know as my needs change, they'll be right there to help me reach my goals. Check out firstflorida.org to learn how you can benefit too.
I've been telling you about CGC Water Treatment and Plumbing for a long time now. Their drinking water systems remove up to 99% of contaminants. We've had a Connecticut water softener and drinking water system in our home for more than 7 years. You can see the difference whether you're washing clothes, the dishes, or what I like to do most, fill this up for some coffee every morning and mostly all day. Remember, if you're not filtering your water, you are the filter. Don't be the filter. Right now, you can get a free Connecticut reverse osmosis system with a purchase of a Connecticut Premier Softener. The experts at CGC Water Treatment and Plumbing will test your water for free and determine your water score. Don't know your water score? CGC will find out and recommend the appropriate Connecticut water treatment solutions so you can improve it. Call 904-552-1242 or visit cgcwater.com. Ask about our 90-day love it or leave it guarantee. CGC Water Treatment and Plumbing, an authorized independent Connecticut dealer. Florida license number CFC 1432579.
Welcome back inside Club 904. Our next guest is ready to go, and so we are ready for her to make her maiden voyage here on this all-new Jacksonville Jaguars-centric podcast. I see lots of you commenting both on YouTube and on X between my channels and the Action Sports Jack streaming channels. Our friend H Audio says, yeah, Dmitri Ravanos, very Panthers-colored glasses. Well, I see my friend Cassidy Hill, and she is already wearing glasses. And so, Cassidy, very excited to have you in the club as I try to make sure that we've got you all set and squared away. We're going to go, you know what? Let's just make this nice and easy as the technology doesn't want to work with us. There we go. Cassidy
There we
Hill
go.
previously covered the Florida Gators and your Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, of course, the team reporter for the Carolina Panthers. Very excited to have you in Club 904, my friend. Thanks for hopping on.
Thanks, Mia. Anytime. I'm always happy to hang out with you and talk for football or life or whatever comes up.
I'm also realizing that you have Alabama ties, and our
I
last guest
do.
here in Club 904, Dmitri Ravanos, also has Alabama ties. And so, you are also uniquely equipped to discuss
Yeah.
the one, the only Bryce Young. So let's start
Yes.
30,000 foot here because you joined the
Okay.
Carolina Panthers, the tail end of the first year of Bryce
2023.
Young. Yes. So the first year of Bryce, Frank Reich, I believe, had already been dismissed as head coach when you arrived.
Yes. I'm very impressed that you know this timeline so well.
I
Frank
just
Wright
remember
has,
us hanging out in the press box together
right, it
when
was
the Panthers, the last time they came to Everbank Stadium.
because I think that was my second game covering the Panthers. The first was they played the Packers right before Christmas here in Charlotte, which was funny because I had just come from covering the Packers. Like, I literally covered Matt LaFleur's press conference on that Monday and Bryce Young's press conference on that Wednesday. I moved on Tuesday. So that was interesting for sure. And then the next week covered the Jags, and that was an interesting, I don't want to say interesting, it actually wasn't an interesting game. It was looking back a lot, we learned a lot. I think that was like a 26-0 Jacksonville win. I want to say Bryce was sacked like 6 times. We've come a long way. This offense has come a long way since then. So, yeah, excited to see what it looks like on Sunday now.
So a little choose your own goosebumps adventure then, because to
Yeah.
your point, that is the lasting image for Carolina Panthers
Mm-hmm.
v. Jacksonville Jaguars. Josh Hines Allen with a multi-sack performance
Yeah.
against Bryce Young.
I
But then on the
think
flip side,
Josh and Travin
yeah,
Walker had 5 between them, I want to say.
yeah, I think it was
Something like
something like
that.
that. So which way do we want to take this, Cassidy? Because we're going to
Mhm.
hit both.
Okay.
The pressure, the defensive intensity of the Jags, or that last comment you made, the Panthers have come a long way
Mhm.
since late December 2023. Probably start with that one, right?
I think they kind of go hand in, like, they're part and parcel together, because you look at the pass rush that Jacksonville has with Josh Hines Allen. I'm still not used to calling him that. Last time I covered him, he was Josh Allen. Between Josh Hines Allen and Walker, and that is a very formidable pass rush. We saw it in 2023. You know, like I said, I think they had 5 sacks between them that game. Jacksonville had 6 as a whole. Bryce was sacked 62 times his rookie season. And so that Jacksonville game was kind of a microcosm, a way to end the year on what had been the story all year long. Because that offensive line in 2023 too for Carolina, the guards in particular, there were 13 different people that played guard on that offensive line that year. It was not pretty, to say the least. And there was a lot of turnover, a lot of injuries that happened, just some fluke things. And that line was never set the entire year. This year, the offensive line had a lot of attention given to it going into the 2024 season for Carolina. They put together not only a starting 5, but really a top 9 that had all guys that have started at some point, and really kind of came in, and by the end of the year, they were one of the top offensive lines in the NFL. They brought back all 9 of those guys for this year. And so that is probably the biggest difference on this offense, because that affects the run game, that affects the pass game, that affects Bryce, that affects everything. And so what does that offensive line look like now against that pass rush of Jacksonville? I think will show you kind of where both teams are compared to that 2023 season and just overall. You know, even when you have a guy like Ike Ekwonu, the left tackle, who we don't know yet what his status will be for Sunday. He had an appendectomy about a week ago. Those are kind of everybody bounces back from those differently. If he doesn't play, you've got guys like Josh Nijman, Brady Christensen that have started before. I think Brady Christensen was a starter on that offensive line in 2023. Josh Nijman was a starter for Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay and has started a couple of games here. So having a full, technically starting 9 back on that offensive line can change an entire offense. So, you know, Bryce Young is big on not looking back, but I think a little bit parenthetically, whatever you see in this week 1 opener can kind of show you, okay, how have they grown over the past year overall? Because you do have something to compare it to at the end of 2023.
You can find Cassidy covering the Carolina Panthers as their team reporter. I'm going to try the power of technology right now, Cassidy. Up and there we go. And there is over that my left or my right at some point her Twitter handle, where you can also find her work, and that includes a profile of Bryce Young. Demetri kind of just hit on it a little bit, Cassidy, earlier in the show. This idea of Bryce Young really looking inward as much as outward. While he was benched last year, I didn't realize his father is a psychologist. Yeah. And so this idea
and his mother is a therapist, I think a school counselor therapist.
So this idea of how cerebral he is, I thought it was interesting that, you know, Demetri noted that he doesn't know if Bryce Young can ever be a top 10 quarterback in the National Football League, but he believes he can be a top 15 game manager. What are realistic expectations for Bryce? And maybe you disagree. Maybe you believe that he can be a top 10 quarterback.
Let me start by saying this, because like you said, I did go to Alabama. I was there well before Bryce. He's younger than me. He's younger than a lot of people. He just turned 24 last month. When I was at Alabama, I remember Nick Saban saying something one time that kind of changed how I view the term game manager, because a lot of times when we talk about game managing quarterbacks in football, it comes with a negative connotation. And Nick Saban first said this because at the time he had A.J. McCarron that is look up a game managing quarterback in the dictionary, and that's what you're going to get is AJ McCarron. And then when I was at Florida, Dan Mullen used to say this about Kyle Trask too, was I need my quarterback to manage the game. Like, having a game managing quarterback is a good thing for your team. That is a good thing for your offense. You know, it's a lot of fun for us as fans to watch game changing quarterbacks like Josh Allen, like Lamar Jackson. I bet you Josh Allen would tell you he would love to have a few more weapons on that offense to where he doesn't have to play Superman every single time. And so being a top 15 game manager, I don't think is necessarily a bad thing, whether it's true or not, and only time will tell. Like, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. If you're managing a game, you're probably winning a game a lot of times. And that's always kind of been the how Bryce is described, is kind of as a point guard. You know, we actually talked about this on our podcast here today as well, that the scouting report on Bryce coming out of Alabama was that he didn't need a number one receiver. And he kind of showed that last year, because that 2023 season, there was so much change on offense. He went through like 4 different play caller changes. And so there was just no consistency whatsoever. But last year, it's easy to look at the stat sheet from the whole year and go, oh, okay, Adam Thielen was his number one guy. There were also several games that Adam Thielen didn't play because he was dealing with a hamstring injury. And each guy kind of had his game where he was the number one guy. And having watched training camp, having watched practice, I wouldn't be surprised at all if that's the case again this year. Obviously, they poured a lot of resources into receiver. They have 2 first-round picks as a receiver now with Xavier Legette and Teteroa McMillan. T-Mac is the guy that I think a lot of people want to be number one, including the coaches, which will make it I'm really, really curious to see what this looks like on Sunday with how the Jags play that as well, because this will now be the 3rd time that T-Mac has played Travis Hunter. So do they take advantage of that familiarity and let Travis cover him, even though T-Mac would probably not be in the slot? So, you know, all of that to say, to go back to your original question, I don't know yet what Bryce's ceiling could be, but I think we've definitely seen his floor raise over the past year. And if at the end of his life he's sitting there saying, I was a game managing quarterback, then that means it probably worked out well for his team.
I appreciate that. So do
Sorry,
our
I went
listeners.
on a rant.
No,
there.
but that was great. That was beautiful. It was a beautiful circular arc of a story. Our friends in the club are loving it. Cassidy Hill of the Carolina Panthers. You may remember DJ Dell from Jaguars Twitter during your time covering the team.
Yes.
He says Tom Brady is the GOAT game manager.
Exactly.
And yeah, things turned out okay for that guy. So maybe not in his personal life, but he's got a lot of money now, and now he's on TV every week.
He's got a lot of rings.
Yeah, exactly. You mentioned T-Mac v. Travis Hunter as a potential one-on-one situation on Sunday when the Jaguars and the Panthers square off at Everbank Stadium at 1 p.m. What's another matchup that maybe we're not talking about in this game that you've circled and said that's the X factor for either one of these teams?
I think J.C. Horn first. I'm curious to see, does he line up against Brian Thomas Jr.? Because I think if you look at 2024 Jags, then that's it, at least from my perspective. So I'd be curious to hear your answer. Brian Thomas Jr. would definitely be the biggest piece on offense for the Jags. So does that mean J.C. Horn is covering him? Do they move him around? And honestly, who gets that Travis Hunter assignment on the other side? Because it sounds like I read a great article from Mike Duraco the other day kind of explaining what the Jags' plans are with Hunter, and it's talked a lot about it's going to be due to personnel. You know, if teams are in nickel, then maybe he goes out there. Does that mean that the Panthers' nickel corner, Shaw Smith-Wade, draws that assignment? Or do they move J.C. Horn over and let their number one guy? Because something that they did a lot this offseason with T-Mac, and I'm curious to hear your insight on if they did this with Travis Hunter as well, is those two guys are coming out of a conference where defenses played off a lot. And so they needed T-Mac to get more comfortable with press. And so they let JC Horn and Mike Jackson press him all off season and just like make him miserable at times. And so I'm curious if that's going to also be the approach with Travis Hunter. And if that's the
Interesting.
case,
Yeah.
do they move JC Horn around and let him shadow him, or do they kind of stay in their assignment football and let Shaw Smith Wade take him? I'm real because this is going to be interesting because this will be the first defense to face Travis Hunter in the NFL. Nobody has any tape on him in this Jags offense and in the NFL. What does it look like? And I think how they play him in the second half may even look different than how they're going to have to play him in the first. And as they learn some things, so I'm really, really curious to see how that assignment gets drawn on the other side of it. And then let me think of some others.
Well, while you think on that, I
Yeah.
love that you brought up the callback to the Big 12 because with regards to Travis Hunter, I heard this more about him as a defensive back than I did a wide receiver. This idea of Colorado changed defense coordinators going into Travis's final college season because they needed to play more zone. They needed to play more off because that's when he can maximize his skill set as a defensive back, when he can see ball, get ball. And so to that point, that is what the defense of Anthony Campanelli is expected to look like here in Jacksonville. I've had multiple players say to me, he fits perfect in this offense in a more press man in this defense. In a more press man defense, Travis Hunter may not actually fit. And so to your point,
because that's not what the Big 12 plays.
No, but to your point, going up in practice, yes, because the Jaguars defense is going to be a predominantly zone defense, I would guess he's gone up against more zone. But Tyson Campbell was part of a defense last year that ran more man-to-man than anybody else in the National Football League, albeit to a 4-win, win total. So that's a great point, Cassidy. I hadn't even thought about that in terms of what he's seen in practice versus, do you think the Panthers are more of a man-to-man defense this year?
I don't, because they weren't necessarily last year, but JC Horn is a really good one. And, do you try to take advantage of the fact that this will be Travis Hunter's first game in the NFL and kind of give him a little welcome to the NFL moment and be like, hey, here's this Pro Bowl corner who's going to stay on your hip the whole time. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But yeah, it's interesting. I did sit down with T-Mac yesterday and we went through all of the highlights from the first two games that he and Travis Hunter played against each other. And we ended up not going through all of them. We jumped around. But he kind of was just explaining, what the quarterback saw, what he did. And it was interesting both times, like whether he won the rep or got a touchdown or Travis did, he said it was more so just what we were able to do individually, not necessarily playing against what the other one was doing. But he said what makes Travis such an interesting player and such a challenging guy to go against is that because he plays both sides, it gives him a study guide to what the other guy's going to do. Like, he's like, he's not playing me as a corner, he's playing me as another receiver. He knows what I'm thinking. He knows what I'm going to do. And he's like, so it almost gives him like a cheat sheet of what the other guy's thinking because he can think it as well. And he's like, that's what makes him such an interesting challenge to play against.
That's really interesting. And I'm very excited to see that story at Panthers. It's Carolina Panthers or Panthers. There we go. Panthers or CarolinaPanthers.com.
Panthers.com.
Okay.
The T-Mac stuff on Travis Hunter, that's up from yesterday. So yeah, go check it out.
And the profile on Bryce as well. Leave us with this, Cassidy. This matchup, we heard Demetri say it, and I'm sure a lot of folks in Carolina are saying it. On paper, is it winnable for the Panthers? Is that the approach, that this is a team that needs to assert itself in week one as, hey, we're no longer just frisky, we are actually a contender? Or is perhaps the idea of the unknown of Liam Cohen as a first-year head coach, only his second year calling plays in the NFL, something that has the Panthers maybe a little bit on their heels?
What's funny is Liam Cohen and Dave Canales followed the same trajectory in that they both called plays for 1 year at Tampa Bay as OC and then got their job as a head coach of a little upstart scrappy team. No, you know what I mean? Like a team that needed to make a turnaround and kind of have a rebuild. And so they're kind of both on the same trajectory. And if you look at it that way, well, then, okay, Dave Canales is technically a year ahead on the timeline. Does that make a difference? I don't know. It's Jimmy's and Joe's versus X's and O's. And that's going to be what it comes down to on the field Sunday. That being said, something that Canales says all the time, he says it all the time to the point that he's like, I know y'all have heard me say this 1,000 times and I'm going to say it again, is come back to us, worry about us, not do we need to beat Jacksonville to prove anything. That's not the point. It's, can we play our best to prove something, and can we play how we want to play? And it sounds like a lot of coach speak, but it's something I hear him say all the time, whether it's in front of a camera or whether it's just to a guy on the sideline during practice. Like if a guy gets a flag on a play during practice, and Canales will jog over to him and be like, just come back to us. Remember, like, come back, like, don't try to celebrate and get an extra 15 yards because you celebrated too much. Like, don't worry about what the guy on the opposite side of the line is saying. Come back to us. Just be with us. And so I think it's not even so much about, obviously you want to win every game, but it's not even so much about can they go in there and win it. It's like, can they go in there and show this is what we've been building. This is what we've been working on. This is who we want to be in 2025. Now, from the fan side of it, there is a sense of hoping history repeats itself, because the last 2 times that the Panthers started,
how many times have we heard this stat, Cassidy?
Right.
I've heard this for since the moment the schedule was announced.
Yeah. So last 2 times, that the Panthers started their season in Jacksonville in week 1. It was 2003 and 2015, and those are the 2 years that that Carolina went to the Super Bowl. And I went back and watched that game last night, actually, because I said I had never seen it. I was halfway through the first quarter when I remembered, not only have I seen this game, I was at it. I was at the stadium in Jacksonville at this game. But yeah, it was a clunky start for both teams. That was Blake Bortles versus Cam Newton. A little bit of a clunky start. Great defenses on both sides. Paul Lesney on one side, Luke Kuechly on the other side. So you had a lot of really good defensive performances in that game. I think Blake Bortles threw a pick 6 to Josh Norman. And but it was a clunky start for both teams. And then that year, Carolina goes to the Super Bowl. 2 years later, Jacksonville should have gone to a Super Bowl. The whole Miles Jack wasn't down.
Miles Jack wasn't down.
So it's interesting. It'll be interesting to see, does history repeat itself? Does this week 1 game kind of set the tone for what both of these teams can be over the next year or two?
Cassidy, I could talk to you all day long. Good news, you will be in Jacksonville on Sunday, so I can talk to you. Outside of obviously the game action, I can talk to you all day long. Appreciate you coming on, hanging out in the club with us. This is only our 2nd ever episode. Nobody better.
Oh, well, I'm so glad to be here
on our first Thursday edition of Club 904. Looking forward to seeing you on Sunday, friend.
See you then, Mia. Thanks.
There she goes again, Cassidy Hill. You could check out her work at Panthers, not Carolina Panthers, Panthers.com. And she will be back in Duval, where she previously covered the Jaguars and also covered the Florida Gators. You guys have hit us up with a ton of questions on YouTube at the Action Sports Jack streaming YouTube channel, on Twitter, both my account and the Action account. We're going to get to all of them coming up before we hand it off. Yes, we're going to hand it off to Fleet and Footy. But first, more to get to on Club 904 going up on a Thursday.
Greg Mackey from Cycles of Jacksonville. Whether you're looking for a side-by-side, ATV, motorcycle, or scooter, Honda has what you need.
The Honda Talon. Ultimate performance meets family-friendly fun. Prices starting at $363 a month. Or the sporty Honda CBR 650 starting at an affordable $204 a month.
Stop by and choose your adventure from a full line of Honda products. Only at Cycles of Jacksonville on Atlantic Boulevard. Family owned and operated since 1983.
Hello, I'm Kenny Lay of Kenny Lay & Associates. Since 2003, our firm has fought exclusively for the rights of men in family law. Divorce, modification of child support, alimony, custody, and more, all for men. A father is vitally important to a child's life, and being a man is not a reason to pay more in child support or alimony. I'm a single father. I get it. If you have a divorce or other family law issue, contact Kenny Lay & Associates at divorcemenonly.com.
High school football is right around the corner, and here at Action Sports Jacks 24/7, we're bringing in a new wave of high school football coverage, introducing the Blitz Breakdown and the Friday night game of the week. Start your week off right with the Blitz Breakdown on Monday nights, giving you live analysis, interviews, picks, rankings, and more, making it a one-stop shop for high school football in the 904. And don't think we're stopping there, because on Friday nights when the lights get bright, Action Sports Jacks 24/7 will be there with a live game of the week, bringing you some of the best in-county rivalries in the area.
Play as hard as you can play, do your job, and stay together. Okay, the rest will take care of itself.
Action Sports Jacks 24/7, your home for high school football.
I did it again, folks. Managed to mute myself again. Let's try that again. Welcome back into Club 904, going up on a Thursday, our first preview Thursday edition of the show here, streaming and syndicated on the Action Sports Jacks channels. I am Mia O'Brien. Let's hit some questions before we get out of here and hand the studio over to the boys of Fleet and Footy. First and foremost, I can only bring up the Twitter comments right now and the Twitter questions. Yes, thank you, Del. I am on mute, Gene. Shout out to Gene. But I see everybody on YouTube, so I'm going to get to your questions as well. So let's start. This was from the top when we were discussing how many or who will be the 48 players who get a jersey on game day. Because, of course, while you have a 53-man active roster in the National Football League, you can only carry 48 of them actually with a jersey for the game itself. And so Jamie said, would imagine Strigow and Green sit the first week. Can't see them carrying 6 edges. I would agree with you. The comments from James Gladstone last week were rather interesting with regards to the defensive ends who can go inside and outside. He was obviously not referring to Eric Armstead. We'll get to him here in just a second. He was referring to Trayvon Walker, Dewan Smoot, and Emmanuel Ogba. Although Ogba has played the majority of his career on the edge, he can go inside. He was more so referring to those other 2 players. And so to that end, if you wanted depth with Strigow and Green, you probably could have them up. I just think their special teams value is going to be interesting as we try to A, identify ahead of the game Sunday, B, see how it shakes out throughout the course of the season, who the Jaguars' core 4 special teamers are, who play all 4 phases of special teams, because in releasing Daniel Thomas and Chad Muma, you lose 2 mainstays of that core 4 group. And so who replaces them and in turn has to get a jersey on game day. Duval T87 asked about Liam keeping 4 running backs. The Jaguars are carrying 4 running backs all season long. As we led off with on today's episode, the bigger question is who will be active on game day. I personally am of the belief that you will see all 4 of them on Sunday if they can get the numbers to crunch that way, because Wyatt Milam and Buster Brown, in my opinion, will be down just because they're still working their way back from injury. I think you can find a way to get all 4 of those running backs active for Sunday's game, but ultimately you may be in a scenario where one of them has to sit, and so it again becomes who gives you the special teams value. I will also throw this out there because we got to make sure we hit this before we get out of here. Travis Etienne will be running back 1 this week. I can't guarantee that beyond this week, but I can assure you from what I have seen in training camp and in practice, he will be beside Trevor Lawrence when the Jaguars line up on offense on Sunday. And even if it's Tank Bigsby or another one of the young guns, he will have the most carries before the day is said and done, or at least touches, because he does offer so much in the receiving game that I think Liam Cohen is going to utilize. All right, so I mentioned Eric Armstead. This is from Jamie as well. Are Mason Smith and Eric Armstead ready after missing so much of camp? That's a great question. They both have been available the last 2 weeks of practice. I don't know the conversations between Eric Armstead, James Gladstone, and Liam Cohen, but it's very clear that there was a conversation of he only needs X amount of practice because he is entering 11 years in the National Football League. He's a veteran. It's not a matter of him needing the reps as much as just him ramping up physically. I don't know if he's there. He's been there in practice the last 2 weeks, but that's a great point with regards to, again, those edges, because the Jags are carrying 6 on their 53-man roster who can go inside and provide depth on the interior of the Jaguars defensive line. Both Team BYG and a couple of others in the YouTube chat have referenced Dewey Wingard starting opposite Eric Murray. Yes, that's correct. And I, for one, am very curious to see throughout the course of the season how that affects the Jaguars once special teams captain and special teams ace each of the last 6 seasons, how that will affect his availability perhaps on special teams. One big thing, I am workshopping a title name. You can leave a comment with maybe a suggestion so I'm not copywriting my fellow ESPN employee in Scott Van Pelt with that. Devin Lloyd. Many of you have clamored for Devin Lloyd's demise because of the missed assignments, because of the coverage liability. But let me throw a stat out at you with regards to the Jaguars' now fourth year inside linebacker, because that is what he is. He is an off-ball linebacker. He is not a Sam linebacker. Devin Lloyd has blitzed the quarterback, has come off on a design blitz 38 times in his rookie season, 34 times in his sophomore season in Jacksonville, 27 times last year. He did not record a career sack in the National Football League until last year, in which he had 2, credited with the first 2 sacks of his career, despite the least amount of designed pass rushing opportunities. He also had 6 pressures, which was a career high. I believe Devin Lloyd can be used as someone to go after the quarterback, both on design blitz and by simulating pressure, which I anticipate Anthony Campanelli will do on Sunday and for the next 17 weeks. Because ultimately, I look at Devin Lloyd as someone who can come and attack the quarterback from the interior, someone who had 6.5 sacks his sophomore year at Utah, 2 sacks in 5 games his junior year, and 8 in his final season. And I say, you've got to tap into what Daniel Jeremiah once upon a time called an angry missile with long arms. Give him one assignment, let him get after that quarterback. Thanks for hanging out in the club with us. Club 904 is officially closed until Sunday, when we will have a very, very special post game that you are not going to want to miss. Thanks for hanging out with us, friends. We will catch you Sunday, 9:04, right here. My social channels, as well as the Action Sports Jacks YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, many, many more. Fleet and Footy coming up next. If you're streaming it live on the Action Sports Jacks channels, we'll catch you later.
To get a new car for anyone in your family, just remember, nobody but Nimnick, the #1 Buick GMC dealer in Jacksonville. Get the latest price breaks on 2023 and 2024 models or the newest 2025 vehicles in the showroom on Phillips Highway, or shop online at nimnickbuickgmc.com 24 hours a day. GMC Sierras, Yukons, and the redesigned Acadias, or get the all-new redesigned line with Buicks. It's nobody but Nimnick, and part of the reason why is this is a first-class buying experience here at Nimnick Buick GMC. You're not just a customer, you're a friend. This is about getting a vehicle that best fits you and getting you on the road, and also helping you and your family down the road. Nimnick has a treating you right guarantee, courtesy, respect, fairness, and most Buicks, GMCs, and Jacksonville's only Car Bravo dealer, nobody but Nimnick. Who has put in the most years and stands behind a better experience? Nobody but Nimnick. GMC. We are professional grade.
Putting your needs first. It's the backbone of how First Florida Credit Union does business. In all honesty, you might as well be speaking another language when it comes to finances. Sure, I'm good with my money, but what am I missing in the fine print? That's what led me to First Florida Credit Union. They're the perfect choice for anyone starting their financial journey because they keep finances easy. Plus, they offer financial education and resources I can trust. So I'm always growing more confident. And as a young adult, I am constantly adding more responsibilities to my plate. From a car payment to a mortgage, it all adds up. Luckily, First Florida Credit Union makes sure it adds up in all the right places and not the wrong ones by offering better rates and lower fees than traditional banks, even if you're still trying to grow your credit. Because as a member-owned institution, First Florida genuinely puts people's needs first rather than focusing on profit. So I know as my needs change, they'll be right there to help me reach my goals. Check out firstflorida.org to learn how you can benefit too.
I've been telling you about CGC Water Treatment and Plumbing for a long time now. Their drinking water systems remove up to 99% of contaminants. We've had a Connecticut water softener and drinking water system